Good afternoon. My name is Chris Adlam with Youth Pledge for Employers, and I'm delighted to be joined by David Upton from Inspire Plus. Hello there, David.
Hello.
Hello. Thanks for giving up your time this afternoon and to talk to me. And I guess my start of 10 question really has to be, can you tell me about Inspire Plus and what it is you do?
Yeah, so Inspire Plus is a charity it's actually based in Lincolnshire, and we provide apprentices into schools. We also work within schools as well. We've got a dedicated team who go out and support in schools. But my role, I suppose, is the apprenticeship side of things. So even though it's based in Lincolnshire, I look after the Norfolk cohort of apprentices, and there's a few in Suffolk as well, but yeah, predominantly in Norfolk. So yeah, just looking after them. We deliver the course for them. And we've got a variety of courses. So we've got level 2 and level 4 at the moment. We're doing a level 3 next year, and then just supporting them in schools as well to make sure that they're happy.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. I know it's never easy to concisely summarise sort of what your organisation does in like a couple of sentences, but I think that was really clear and really interesting. So how does that actually transpire onto sort of a day-to-day basis for you? So what kind of things are you doing on a, I say typical day, but I'm aware that no such thing exists.
So if I put myself in the position of one of the apprentices, they're predominantly based in schools. It doesn't have to be. Some of them are in coaching companies or in leisure facilities, but the majority of them are within a school workplace. So they'd effectively be doing the kind of things that a teacher or teaching assistant would be doing. In our case, because it's a apprenticeship that supports PE and school sport, they'd be helping supporting PE lessons, and then at lunchtime they'd be supporting activities that are going on during the lunch breaks and after school clubs as well, which is really useful for the schools, getting more children involved in sport via the apprentices as well who deliver the sessions.
Interesting. And so what's the process of someone showing an interest in one of the apprenticeships to sort of getting into their placement? What is that process like?
So we do it in a couple of ways, really. That we advertise via Indeed, or we support the schools who show an interest and want an apprentice. We help them with the application process as well and the interview process. We try and match them geographically. So if a school is interested, we will search our database of candidates and see which people are closest to the school. We also, if the candidates send in an application and say that they're interested in it, we always encourage them to go to their local schools, even if their local school hasn't shown an interest before, because we've had quite a lot of work come our way and come their way simply for them sort of knocking on the door of the school and seeing if they're interested in it, because a lot of the schools won't know that something like this exists until the apprentice or the apprentice to be goes and sort of gives the information to the school.
It's really interesting, and you've obviously given me, I've got sort of 2 points of attack here. I want to ask you about sort of the apprentices and what it takes to do, for them to be an apprentice in the schools. But I just want to quickly sort of go back to yourself as an organisation first, if that's okay. So you've spoken to me a little bit about sort of the recruitment process and, the placement process there. Sort of how many different roles are there, or what are the people within the team at Inspire Plus to sort of facilitate all of that?
We have the CEO of the company who sort of heads everything up. We have a team that goes in and supports PE in schools. They run holiday camps as well, sort of half camps, providing meals during school holiday time as well. And then we're the education side. So there's 5 of us within that education side who support the apprentices and deliver the course for them. And I sort of zoom all over the county, visiting the schools and the apprentices within the schools, meeting the mentors and having what we call progress reviews, where we set targets for the apprentices and just make sure that they're doing what they should be in the schools. And if they're not, then looking to sort of set those targets moving forward, because a lot of them, that will be the first time that they've been back into a school since they left school. So it's a very, very different world for them.
And for any of those apprentices who, as you say, are looking to get a placement, let's say, and go back to school, as I say, for the first time in a long time, what kind of soft skills are you looking sort of for them to demonstrate? And maybe if you're looking at whether it be an application form or a CV, because they're interested in the placement, what kind of sort of experiences or things that they're doing in their spare time are you sort of looking for?
I think it really does help if they've had some experience of like volunteering at local sports clubs, a little bit of coaching. That always rings well with me, particularly when I see the word volunteering on an application and people are giving up their own time to help out. That always sits well with me. They talk passionately about what they're doing. But when they get into the workplace and you know they go through and they're actually getting interviewed, how they respond with the children, you know, what sort of relationships they have with the children as well. Are they enthusiastic? Are they kind? Are they supportive to the children as well? So yeah, those sort of skills that I suppose any teacher who's worth their salt should have.
And you've sort of touched a little bit on there when you sort of talk about teacher training. If I could sort of go back to your role now as someone delivering training, sort of as you say, engaging with sort of different people from different backgrounds, different experiences. If there was a young person watching this and they were interested in some kind of training role, you know, as they work with, based on your sort of experiences, what kind of skills would you say are actually utilised for that kind of role?
I think again, I've always lived by the mantra that you never let anyone struggle. So I think being there as much as you can be, you know, if they are struggling, if they're going through times when things are hard, I'd like to think that I'm always there on the end of the phone or a, you know, the email, whatever it is, they can contact me. And I always say any time of the day. I might not answer if they send a message at midnight, but I'll certainly get back to them as soon as I can. So yeah, I think that caring side of things as well, supportive, clear, organised. I think you need to be organised to be on top of their workload and to support them with the workload that they have as well. So and a good communicator as well. You know, you get your message across clear, but I think it's got to be done in a passionate and often jovial way as well. You've got to have a bit of fun while you're doing it. In any job, you've got to have a bit of fun.
You talk a bit about fun there, and that's obviously quite nicely on to the next question I'm going to ask. And this question is sort of is about your role and then the apprentices, if that's okay. So for yourself and the apprentices, what do the good days look like in role, and what do the challenging days look like?
Yeah, again, another thing that I often say to my apprentices, it's very much like a roller coaster. The job, you're going to get some days which are incredibly hard, and you'll probably come back at the end of the day thinking, why am I doing this? And then you'll go in the next day, things will be completely different, and then you'll come home and think, oh right, okay, that's why I'm doing it. You know, you get the smiles from the children within the workplace that you're working for, and that success that they have. No matter how big the success is, if you see children enjoying themselves and they've got that smile on their face that they've done something well, there's no better feeling than that.
And what about the challenging days then? So you know, you mentioned on that, as I say, about the really good days. Like, what kind of challenges do they face, if you see what I mean?
I think, you know, we're working in a school. We've all been in schools at some point, and we know that behaviour is often quite tricky. And I think that's probably the thing that a lot of them find a little bit difficult, is how do they manage that behaviour? And it's drawing the line between, you know, not being their friend, but being supportive and, you know, drawing that line. And yeah, that's quite difficult, particularly for some of them who are young. We have, most of them are in primary schools, but some are in secondary schools. And if they're sort of 17, 18-year-old, then there's no difference in age really between them and the higher end of the children that they're working with. And that's difficult. I suppose getting used to the school jargon, all the different words that they might encounter during the time in the schools, and working with staff as well that might be a lot older than them. They may never have had that as well. So those, I suppose, relationships within school as well is quite tricky to start off with. Majority of them, they get over that bit quite quickly. But I think the behavioural challenges is a tricky one. No matter how many years you've been teaching, it's always going to be tricky.
I completely agree, and I think it's really interesting. And going back to the point where you made, where for some of the apprentices, it could be the first time they've been in a school environment since they were at school themselves. And to be honest, it's only when you come out of school into the sort of the real world, as it were, that you see that actually there isn't really many environments like a school environment. You know, as I say, sort of it's a completely sort of different structure. You know, sort of people act in different ways. And yeah, as I say, even if you could spend years in industry and go back to school, and it's still going to be completely different to what experience you've had in the past.
And every day is different. I know there's quite a few jobs that can say that, but that is literally every day is completely different. And you will get children from one day to the next who are completely different. And yeah, it's rewarding, it's enjoyable, but it certainly does come with its challenges.
And what kind of roles and sort of opportunities and things do your apprentices go on to do really once they've overcome these challenges? Things what kind of sort of options are open to them after that?
So if they do the level 2, there are higher level apprenticeships that they can go on to, level 3s and level 4s. 45% of our apprentices are kept on by their school in some capacity. So that's whether that's to do a further level apprenticeship or they're employed by the school as something like a teaching assistant. 45% of them are recruited by that school, and that's a good figure. That really is. Some of them use it as a vehicle to experience the time in school before, say, going off to university. Some have got it set in their head they want to be a PE teacher, but they're just testing the water to see whether they enjoy that working in the schools. Some want to go down a coaching background, so they might get that experience with working with children, but they might think, right, well, the school workplace isn't necessarily the place for me, but I enjoy the coaching side as well. So they might go down that route as well. And some of them decide to go and do something completely different, but it's so good having done it because there's so many transferable skills. Even if it's not for you, you've got that organizational aspect, you've got the communication aspect, and they're skills that you can transfer across anything.
I completely agree there. I think I go out and work with young people quite frequently, and I think transferable skills is the phrase I find myself saying most often and most frequently. And as you sort of summarised there, yes, some of the skills they could gain in one of these apprenticeships is going to set them up for, as some of the roles you said there, and many more, to be honest. And that's really interesting. And it sort of leads me quite nicely on to my final question. I've asked this to all the sort of people I've done these employer talks with, and you've already mentioned some of your sort of mantras and little philosophies that you like to pass on and live by. But imagine you could go back in time and speak to, say 17, 18-year-old David, whether you liked him or not, taking into account maybe sort of mistakes you've made, successes you've had, sort of things that have happened to you along your career journey. What's the one piece of career advice you would go back and give to your younger self?
Oh, that is a really good question, because I wasn't the best at school. I'll be perfectly honest. I wasn't the best at school. I could be a handful. And I think, if I went back, I would apply myself 100% when I was at school. I think when I was at school, if I applied myself 50%, I'm probably being quite generous. And, I look back and think my exam results were all right, but I could have done a lot better. I could have learned a lot more. I could have listened a lot more. So, yeah, I think if I had my time back at school again, I'd certainly knuckle down a bit more and pay more attention.
And sort of like, I think we'd all like to sort of say like, yeah, I wish I'd done better, as done that. But sort of coming out and having done what you have done, if you see what I mean, is there any other sort of area other than academically where you sort of think to yourself, you know what, I wish I'd done that or been better in that area? So I mean, whether it be like sort of soft skills or experiences.
I think just being a nice person, being caring, being friendly to people. I think nowadays I'm really good at that. That's one of my strong skills. But I think back when I was 17, I think I was possibly a bit judgmental. I think as a competitive sports person, you almost sort of didn't have a lot of time for people that did struggle with sport. And I think that's one of the most important things that you can have as an apprentice. You don't necessarily need to be good at sport, but you need to have an appreciation that some people do struggle with it, and you're there to help them learn.